Most people believe something comforting about themselves. That if the moment came, if the order was wrong, if the authority was unjust, if the instruction crossed a moral line, they would refuse. They would question. They would resist. They would walk away. This belief feels essential to being human. But there was an experiment that quietly dismantled it. Not in war, not under threat, not through violence, but in a calm room, with ordinary people, under polite authority. And what it proved was not that humans are evil. It proved something far more disturbing. Humans obey far more easily than they realize. This is not a story about monsters. It is a story about teachers, office workers, parents, students, people who believed they were good. The reason this experiment still matters today is simple. The systems that run modern life, corporations, governments, institutions, algorithms, all depend on obedience, not force, compliance. And once you understand how easily compliance is triggered, you begin to see it everywhere. The experiment was presented as harmless. Participants were told it was about learning and memory. They were given clear instructions. They signed consent forms. The environment was professional, orderly, controlled. There was no chaos. Authority was represented not by weapons, but by credentials, lab coats, formal language, clear procedures. Everything about the setting communicated safety and legitimacy. Obedience rarely begins with something extreme. It begins with something small. A button press, a confirmation, a minor instruction. Participants were asked to administer mild actions in response to mistakes. Nothing felt dangerous at first, and that is how the line was crossed. Not by jumping, but by stepping. One instruction followed another. Each step justified the next. At a certain point, participants hesitated. They expressed concern. They questioned whether they should continue. This moment is critical, because it reveals something about authority. When participants hesitated, they were not threatened. They were reassured. Statements like, "Please continue. The experiment requires that you go on. You are not responsible." Authority did not force compliance. It absorbed responsibility. And when responsibility is removed from the individual, obedience increases dramatically. Most people continued. Not all, but far more than expected. People who believed they would never comply, did. They obeyed not because they were cruel. They obeyed because they trusted authority. They feared disruption. They felt trapped by procedure. They believed someone else was accountable. This is the core insight of the experiment. Obedience is not about aggression. It is about structure. When people hear about this experiment, they often respond with confidence. I would have stopped. But the experiment was repeated. Across cultures, across ages, across backgrounds. And the results were consistently similar. Because the experiment did not test morality. It tested situational pressure. And situational pressure overrides personal identity more often than we like to admit. The most unsettling part is not the experiment itself. It's how closely it resembles everyday life. Workplace hierarchies, digital systems, automated decisions, algorithmic instructions. People follow procedures that harm others not because they want to, but because that's the process. The experiment never ended. It scaled. Some participants did stop. This matters. They were not braver, not smarter, not more moral. The key difference: they stopped identifying the authority as legitimate. Once legitimacy collapsed, obedience collapsed with it. This is the true weakness of power. Not rebellion, loss of belief. The experiment proved something uncomfortable. Under the right conditions, most humans will obey. So the real question is not, would I obey? It is, what conditions am I currently inside? Because obedience does not announce itself. It feels normal. This experiment is not a condemnation of humanity. It is a warning. A reminder that morality is fragile when responsibility is outsourced, and that the most dangerous systems are not those that threaten us, but those that ask politely, because the moment we stop asking questions, obedience does the rest.